Something I find unfortunate is how so many people's introduction to psychosis is through stigma. I'm certainly guilty of, I don't know, I wouldn't say buying into stigma, but maybe being influenced by stigma before I ever developed psychosis. I really didn't understand schizophrenia, schizoaffective. I didn't know what exactly that meant, but I would use it casually to mean a person who's pretty erratic, a person who's an oddball, who acts really wild. And I think for a lot of people, when they hear the word schizo, that's what they think of too. The thing is, schizophrenia, which means split mind, is more than behavior. It's a series of symptoms upon symptoms upon symptoms that result in a break from reality, meaning that a person's experiences are outside of the shared reality that everybody else kind of lives in. These experiences, these extra realistic experiences, are a reality individual to them. And that does not make them wild and crazy and erratic. That makes them a person who's simply having experiences outside of the norm, experiences that other people can't necessarily relate to. There is nothing inherently bad about that. There is nothing inherently violent about that. But the way that schizophrenia and other psychotic experiences gets portrayed in the media kind of suggests otherwise, and the stigma just gets built and built and built by news reports, fictitious depictions, the media circus related to criminal trials. All of these things have compounded this stigma, making it larger than life and wildly inaccurate. Today we are going to examine the stigma that is related to psychosis. Specifically, the stigma that suggests that people with psychosis are inherently violent. We are going to debunk some myths related to this, as well as look into how violent acts that are committed in psychosis are handled in the court system. Take my hand and come with me into this crystal scenery and wait till I retain the ticket. Before we get started, I would like to throw out a trigger warning to say that the subject of psychosis in and of itself is a sensitive subject that may at times be difficult to talk about. So if at any point during today's video I say anything that may be triggering or upsetting to you, you are more than welcome to leave. In this video specifically, we will be talking about acts of violence, so if that is not your cup of tea, you are more than welcome to leave. Also, a disclaimer to say that I am not a mental health care professional, and I am in no way qualified to give any advice, medical, psychiatric, or otherwise. Who I am simply is a person living with serious mental illness who is here to share with you the wisdom and insight I've gleaned along my journey of mental health recovery. Now, getting right into it, I want to share an excerpt from the book Living Well with Psychosis by Dr. Erin Brennan. This is an amazing guide to recovering and living with psychosis. And there's one spot specifically that talks about violence that I think purely encapsulates the purpose of this video. It basically touches on everything I want to say today. So we're just going to start with that. Now, under the chapter about myth busting, he says, myth 1, people with psychosis are dangerous. This myth is false and resistant to disproving. Individuals with a psychotic disorder are more likely to be victims of violence, more likely to be injured by a firearm than harm someone else. For many, these experiences labeled psychosis are frightening, and the natural reaction is to retreat from people and situations they avoid. So the idea that people with psychosis are running violently out into the world is detached from reality. The research debunks the idea that individuals with psychosis are violent. When individuals with psychosis are involved in violence, the devil is in the details. People with psychosis who are involved in violence have many of the risk factors of the people perpetrating violence who are not experiencing psychosis, such as extreme negative emotions like anger, drug misuse. If you use fancy statistics and remove the people misusing drugs from the data, the relationship between psychosis and violence is eliminated. Social factors, poverty, high crime area, early abuse, and unemployment are all associated with violence. This myth is perpetuated by political leaders, media coverage, entertainment, and an uninformed public. When bad things happen, media and those with an agenda seek to explain it away as a mental health problem and frequently link it to psychosis, and some advocate for increasing ease of controlling patients without evidence. Worse, many reports conflate any mental health treatment with psychosis in cases of danger and any mental health diagnosis with psychosis. While movies, TV shows, and comics are wildly entertaining, they frequently portray those with psychosis as villains or in another poor light. Listen to your soul and recognize that most likely your aspiration in life is to make the world better and safer. Wow, there is so much in just that page and a half. And I really resonate with a lot of it because I have received comments from people telling me that I am violent without even knowing me, just because I disclosed my diagnosis. I have personally faced the stigma of people thinking that I'm violent, and I am honestly one of the most gentle people you will ever meet. I'm a Care Bear, right? That's what my fiance calls me. And Care Bears are gentle, clumsy creatures who frequently trip, and that's about as dangerous as things ever get. So I really feel like that encapsulated exactly how I feel about violence, how I personally have been the victim of violence. I've never perpetrated any violence. How the violence that I have heard of related to psychosis typically is related to people in situations where drugs are involved, or they are going through really challenging times with, say, unemployment, major life changes, things that cause a lot of stress. Like psychosis is not the trigger of violence. It's other factors that a person just happens to be in psychosis while dealing with. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like it said in the book, when you take away drugs from the picture, you eliminate the violence. And I think that says a lot. I think it really just goes to show that people with violent tendencies in psychosis may commit violent acts. People with passive tendencies in psychosis will continue to be passive. Maybe a person with violent tendencies might be more prone to acts of violence than outside of psychosis, but nonetheless, they do have that predisposition. It is there. I know people who have committed violent acts that have absolutely no predisposition, who are honestly kind of one in a million, because it's really not as common as you'd think. But honestly, that is the minority, and most people with psychosis are safe. Well, safe from themselves, maybe I would say. Safe from others, that's a point we should really get into next. In the realm of psychosis advocacy, when violence is brought up, I most often hear people say, people in psychosis are more likely to be victims than perpetrators. That is like the one fact that gets thrown out the most. And there's a lot that also can be said on that, right? How the amount of violent acts committed by people with psychosis is only marginally greater than the general population, and how it's still so uncommon that it is the minority, as I said. But yes, more likely the victim than the perpetrator. Emphasis on victim, because there is a reason why the victim, word gets pulled out. People with psychosis are vulnerable. And when you are dealing with a vulnerable population, they are far more susceptible to abuse, exploitation, physical, emotional, financial, whatever harm. Like when you have a person who does not have a firm standing in reality, They're easy to manipulate, easy to take control of, take advantage of, and that is why they're more likely to be the victim. Take the perpetrator word out of the picture and just victim alone, just that is a very common psychotic experience. Let's not even think about the violence. That's not in the picture. The fact alone is that people in psychosis are vulnerable. People in psychosis are more likely to be victims. More likely to be victims than people even outside of psychosis in a lot of senses, because they do not have the normal defenses that people who are neurotypical may have. People of this population are considered to be mentally incapacitated. At least that's how I was viewed in court. I've spoken about this in other videos, how I was deemed in court to be mentally incapacitated, meaning that I could not make my own decisions with reasonable discretion. And that is just a fancy way of saying I can't be trusted with myself. I can't take care of myself. I can't look after myself. I'm not safe by myself. If left to my own devices, I will wander away and get lost in the middle of the night wearing nothing but a t-shirt in the middle of December. That is my normal in psychosis. So victim, yeah, very, very likely. Way more common than violence. There unfortunately are some sick people who prey upon the vulnerable kinds, like those in psychosis. That it's just you've just got like a target on your back. You're an easy target. I've certainly been taken advantage of, not just by, a partner of mine who is abusive, but by other people in my life, people, friends, whoever, people I thought were friends. I was just moldable. You could do anything to my mind. Gaslighting is enormously easy when a person already has a shaky standing in reality. Gaslighting, morphing a person's reality, giving them a new reality, morphing every basic fundamental concept they have of reality. It's all too easy, and there are people who just love to sink their teeth into people like that. People will find ways of swindling you out of all of your money or taking your possessions. They will find ways. And I have had multiple people prey upon me in various ways. People honestly have used me for entertainment when they realized that they could craft my reality and give me delusions and make up worlds for me to buy into. They took great pleasure in laughing at me for being in psychosis. I was a puppet, and that is so sick. But people don't think of it that way. People who haven't experienced reality like I have, like in the sense that I'm, on the fringe of reality or having separate realities, people who haven't been through that will not understand the gravity of their impact. Or if they do, they really are just sick. Because to fuck with a person in psychosis is one of the cruelest things I can imagine. A person who already has a loose concept of reality it's a mind fuck, okay? And so to play with a person's mind like that, it's just really, really cruel. So if it's the case that people in psychosis are easy targets, vulnerable, susceptible to harm, and too afraid to really be all that violent because they're more inclined to retreat and withdraw and isolate, where does the stigma come from? Well, that's kind of a complicated answer. I'm just going to start with the easy way of describing this, which I guess would be just a singular word: scapegoat. Okay, I'm sure everybody, if not most everybody, is familiar with the term scapegoat, which is basically the person that gets blamed for everything that they didn't actually do. I was the scapegoat in my family, and I would get blamed for everything my siblings did that was not my fault, and no one ever believed me. For instance, one time my sister's laptop went missing, and I was blamed for taking it. And everybody was pointing fingers at me. Neither of my parents would believe me, and this went on for months of them all hounding me for being the one to take the laptop that I did not take, only for it to be revealed that my brother had it the whole time. But no one apologized. No one really took it back. You know, this is just the nature of being the scapegoat, is that people will pin everything on you for God knows why. And no one ever really even takes it back when it's revealed that it's not true. Being the scapegoat is just being the dumping ground for everybody else's faults. And yeah, it's really not fun. Psychosis is the mental health equivalent of that. Anytime something bad happens and it's out in the media, especially with, say, mass shooters, it gets pinned on psychosis. People will blame psychosis for just about anything because they don't really understand it. There's not a lot of education about it. And the more that we dump on psychosis, the greater the stigma gets. And the greater the stigma gets, the more we dump on psychosis. And so, yeah, it's this self-perpetuating shit firestorm dumpster clusterfuck. It's just a nightmare that the lazy, easy way out is to blame psychosis. So psychosis being a scapegoat would be probably the easiest way I can really convey why the stigma works the way it does and how it came to be, right? But that is actually, I would say, like the end point. It's the easiest concept to understand in where the stigma came from is the scapegoat definition, but it is kind of the end result of levels 2 and 3. I'm just going to work backwards here, and I'm sorry, my mind just works this way. I don't know if this will make sense to anyone else, but if the stigma comes from scapegoating, the scapegoating comes from the media, and the media comes from the rare occurrences in which psychosis actually gets handled in the criminal court system. Level 2, media. So we have lazy journalism to blame. We have shock and awe value to blame. We have basically clickbaity kind of engagement tactics to blame. There's a lot in journalism that is to blame. When we are covering psychosis, not even just as a scapegoat, but in general, there is so much to it that just blows it way out of proportion. Like if you have an instance, say with me, of the time I went streaking downtown, fortunately this didn't make it into the news, but what happened was I went for a little sprint naked, and it would get blown into like crazy mad woman runs through town causing vandalism and breaking in car windows. You know, none of that would have actually happened, but just to say that you have this incident that's unfortunate, kind of embarrassing, and it is completely blown out of proportion. So completely blown out of proportion. You know, these stories of any occurrence in psychosis tend to get totally exaggerated. And not only that, they are disproportionately publicized. The things that happen to people in psychosis are little kernels amongst everything that happens in the world. But with each kernel, it is magnified and magnified and magnified. And all of the other things around it, the majority of things happening don't get publicized at all. Or if they do, they don't make it to the front page. Psychosis always makes it to the front page. Why? Fucking entertainment. It's almost like a freak show or something to people, right? Where, you know, back in the day when they had those like circus sideshows, it would be displaying things that seemed kind of odd, things people couldn't really relate to, people didn't understand, people found peculiar. People love to fixate on the unknown, and psychosis is a big question mark to so many people because they can't relate. And well, yeah, that's something to stare at now, isn't it? Right? I can't tell you how many people, wow, really enjoyed observing me in my psychotic state. It's amusing. It's fairly amusing if you don't know what you're looking at. And that kind of sucks. That's just the nature of humanity, apparently, though, because now we live in this true crime culture where people are super duper into these podcasts or, you know, like docu-series about really grisly things that happen, real things that happen that are unfortunate. And it's almost like watching a train wreck. people can't look away. They consume it like crazy. It's become very, very, very popular. It's not even quirky anymore. It's just common. It's mainstream. And yeah, I don't know how else to say it. It's just a freak show. So when you get freak show oddity and you get true crime and you get exploitative journalism and you get real life accounts of unfortunate acts committed by people in psychosis that are taken to court, you get level 3, which would be NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity, aka the insanity defense. So let me explain. The insanity defense is the not guilty by reason of insanity plea that is used in the criminal court system worldwide. This is a widespread defense used to protect people with serious mental illness who commit criminal acts in a state of unawareness, i.e. psychosis. Basically, people who succeed in getting this verdict are proven to not be held criminally responsible for their acts because they either didn't know what they were doing or knew what they were doing but didn't know that it was wrong. Most of these cases are nonviolent, actually. It is incredibly rare to even use this plea, actually. Only 1% of criminal court cases in America are NGRI, and of those, only a quarter succeed in getting that verdict. So this is not common. This is also not a get out of jail free card, which a lot of people think of it as. Honestly, it's not a great thing to follow you. This is a lifelong judgment. So, typically in a case where a person succeeds in getting NGRI, they do not go to prison, but they do have to go through the process of recovering and being hospitalized, institutionalized, sometimes for many, many years. Once they get out, they will be closely monitored for the rest of their lives with very strict restrictions. And it is a lifelong thing. It follows you. So not a get out of jail free card, not really even something you want to live with unless you absolutely have to. This is a very, very serious matter that is treated very, very inappropriately. It is misused a lot. It is taken very far from how it's intended to be used. And oh boy, it is a lot. NGRI tends to get misused in situations where it is absolutely not warranted. And this is, let's see, this is probably going to be the hardest part for me to explain, but it will make the most sense. So these levels I established earlier, right? Level 1, stigma. Level 2, media. Level 3, insanity defense. Well, that stigma had to come from the other two first. So the first problem in what really kickstarted how terrible the stigma became is this insanity defense that was misused and heavily publicized. And I will specifically draw upon one example of gross misuse of NGRI. That would be the court case of Jeffrey Dahmer, the serial killer who famously misused NGRI and failed in receiving that verdict because it was absolutely not meant for him. We have now Jeffrey Dahmer misusing NGRI, very violent act that he committed in his right mind, acts, plural. The media, which super duper duper loved this story and blew it up. Everybody knew about this case. Everybody knew about this violent man and the plea that he attempted, and the story just kept getting further and further spread. That level of the media created a bit of stigma, right? But the thing is, that stigma came from a story that wasn't even Psychosis. It was scapegoated. He tried to use psychosis as a cover-up for his actions, to excuse away his crimes and get out of jail free. And he failed, but nonetheless, people heard this story, heard psychosis, saw killer, and put it all together in a slurry, right? Even when you take Jeffrey Dahmer out of the equation, as I said earlier with level 2, the media, they will take these kernels of rare occurrences and disproportionately publicize them, radicalize them, sensationalize them, and take them so far from their original meaning that all you get is shock and awe and stigma. So level 1, 1% of the criminal court cases in America at all being 2, blown way out of proportion, and 3, cementing an idea in people's minds that psychosis must be this terrible, violent thing. And yeah, it's just so far from the truth. So if you followed all that, you've probably figured out by now that I am really passionate about this topic specifically, and B, this is a really tangled web. And so there's no one answer for why people think people with psychosis are violent. It's many factors. You can see, however, when you put together all the pieces of the media circus and the scapegoating and the people who truly do commit violent acts that try to get away with murder, literally. This all comes together, and you can see from far away, looking at the big picture, wow, it's a beautiful mess. It is. And there's so much to be undone, and it's gonna take a lot of effort. It's people like me chipping away little bits of effort. People like, my friends, the researchers at UW that I associate with, people like Dr. Erin Brennan, who's doing such amazing work to put a positive lens on psychosis. So I don't really know how to summarize this because my brain is a little bit mushy after explaining all of that, or at least trying to explain all that. I don't always know how to put my thoughts together in video form, but yeah, this is it's an interesting subject that I really only feel like I touched on. Like, I honestly feel there's so much more that can be said about the violence and stigma related to psychosis, the very misunderstood reality of this false reality. Yeah, it's a shame that people face this stigma at all. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. So thank you so much for watching my video. I truly appreciate it. This is a very special video for me. Actually, I've been meaning to discuss the insanity defense for literal years. And as I said, I've barely touched on this. I've been wanting to do an entire series about the insanity defense because I am personally touched by it. It does mean a great deal to me. I have a lot of compassion for it, and I've just been afraid that I couldn't do it justice. I've been kind of teasing this subject in my videos for like over a year. I just haven't really felt that I can articulate NGRI in a fashion that truly does it justice. Like, I would love to honor this subject more thoroughly in later videos. This is kind of an introduction. If you are interested in the insanity defense and you'd like me to speak more on it, please let me know in the comments, because I have been studying this specific subject extensively for a couple of years, and I'm just kind of looking for that push to have the confidence to talk about it publicly. So this is an introduction. I hope you liked it. Please comment, like, subscribe to support my channel, as well as hit the bell for notifications to future videos. Check out my merch. There's ads running below the video. I designed everything myself because I love digital art. So it was really more an opportunity for me to make pretty things than anything. And I put out videos every Thursday/Friday. So if you'd like to see more of my content, there's plenty coming soon. and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Bye. So close your eyes.